everybody. Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. Thank you for checking us out. If you are not already, make sure you like and subscribe anywhere where you get your podcasts. Make sure to check us out at OutKick.com. We post content every single week. But today's guest, I'm very excited for this conversation. I tell her this in the interview, but really we talk to so many people. If you've been around, you know, we talk to politicians, we talk to people who have dedicated themselves to the cause of fighting for sanity, fighting for women and children and parental rights, people who dedicated their lives to this. But I love talking to people who have tackled this issue when they didn't necessarily want to. And that is exactly what our guest today has done. We saw just a month ago a victorious outcome for Jessica Tapia. This is a teacher out of Southern California. She is a Christian, a devout Christian, but she was fired from her job for refusing to use preferred pronouns. She was fired for refusing to hide the gender identity of students from parents. But she just secured and received a $360,000 settlement from the California's Jurupa Unified School District. This is phenomenal news. It delivers a strong message to other educators, especially educators of faith, that truth will win in the end. Again, could not be more excited for this conversation, to hear from Jessica, to hear her speak about her convictions and why she felt it necessary to take decisive action. So check out the interview with Jessica Tapia here. Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. It is people like you who are my favorite to talk to. We talk a lot, to politicians and world-leading scientists and different things, but people who are brave enough to take a stand when it's never a position they would have in a million years, I'm sure, imagined yourself in. Those are the kind of people whose stories need to be highlighted. And so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share a little bit about yourself and ultimately the scenario you found yourself in before just a few weeks ago, having a really amazing outcome.
Yeah, you know what? Since I'm talking to the amazing Riley, I'll start with the fact that so I was fired from the high school that I attended. I was an athlete there. I was a basketball player, but my friends actually convinced me to join swim my junior year. And you know what? My basketball coach loved it though, because he was like, that for sure made you quicker on the court. And I was so toned. It was amazing. But I met my husband. I started dating Jonathan there. He was an amazing swimmer, and his mom had actually invited me to her Bible study. So I fell in love with his family. So my husband's my high school sweetheart, and I went back to that high school to, hopefully have an impact on the students there today, in the same way that I was so impacted by my teachers and my coaches. And then was completely blindsided when one day students decided to look me up on social media, and there they found my Christian conservative views that I don't talk about in class. And they took issue to them because I'm very clear that I'm not, pushing LGBTQ or transgenderism on children. And they had specifically found a video I made in Kohl's where I walked in and I was just inundated with all the Pride clothing. But that day I learned that they are making onesies and like 3 t-shirts with this Pride, sayings and logo. And I just couldn't believe it. And so I put a video out there to alert moms, because I believe in the fact that we should be voting with our dollar and voting in alignment with our values. So I put that out there, and, some 14, 15-year-old students found that and took it as hate and disrespectful, and submitted that along with about 8 posts from my Jesus highlight to my school district. And I was the next day ripped away from my class, never to return, didn't get to say bye to my students or anything, went under investigation, which was strange right away because I'm thinking, what needs to be investigated? I've not done anything, in the workplace or in my job. Students came across my personal views and beliefs that they took issue to. What's the problem? But it was a problem. It was a huge problem to the school district. They decided to just barely allow me to come back to work, but now I would have to follow a plan of assistance and directives. So that is the day that I learned that I would, from there on out, have to call students by their preferred pronoun or gender. withhold that information from their parents, which of course I clarified, are you asking me to lie to parents? And they said yes, for student safety and privacy. And then also learned that I would have to let transgenders in my girls' locker room. So of course I clarify again, are you telling me a boy, potentially a boy, in my girls' locker room? They said yes, if he's identifying now as a female. So obviously I'm convicted over this plan of assistance and directives, and I was in complete turmoil. I was so stressed out, had so much anxiety because I knew a huge decision was on the line. And essentially I had three options. One would be to bow down, put my head in the sand and save my salary and do whatever I'm being asked to do. Secondly would be to just walk away, resign, seeing that now I'm obviously not, I guess, fit to be a public school teacher anymore in their eyes. Or thirdly, take a stand and speak up. But that answer didn't come to me right away. I went off on stress leave for 3 months, trying to discern what I should do. And I was just sharing this on the previous interview, but there was a time frame in that stress leave where I felt like I was being like haunted by my salary because my family so greatly relied on it. And I just couldn't see how, risking losing that, how we would live, what we would do from there. And I really had to like break through that stronghold. And not only that, I also even had to just forgive whatever students it were that reported me and took issue to my beliefs, and forgive the school district for how they had treated me. And through all of that, I eventually, was led clearly by the Lord to take a stand for truth. And so I did that. I emailed my school district and I said, I'm ready to come back to work. I just need you to know there's a few directives you've given me that I cannot comply with. It would be against my faith and beliefs. And so I wrote those all out. Of course, I spoke from my faith and why I wouldn't be able to follow the things they were asking me to do. And they said, it sounds like you're asking for a religious accommodation meeting, so come on in and we'll see if and how we can accommodate your religious beliefs. So I have some hope at that point because I know it's their duty to do that. But I go into this meeting and it was like something I'd never experienced before. I was questioned up and down, left and right on my Christian faith. Where do I go to church? What do I read? How often? What is it, from my Bible that says I can't refer to students by whatever they want to go by that day and withhold that information from their parents. And they were really, really definitely trying to get me to change up my stance when I had already clearly given them the answer, no, I won't do these things. And so I held firm, even though I was shaking in my chair, in all of these meetings. But the Lord was definitely with me there and giving me the strength to make it through. And so at the end of that, they determined that they could not accommodate my religious beliefs. That is in writing on my termination paper. And I was a tenured teacher at the end of my 6th year of teaching for the very school district that I was a student at. So immediately after that, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to seek justice in this and file a lawsuit against the school district. So that's when I found the amazing Advocates for Faith and Freedom. They're actually right in the town that I live in here in Southern California. And we filed a lawsuit in May of 2023. And exactly 1 year later, like to the T, we came to this settlement, which we pushed for and we worked hard for. It was definitely not, the first offer they put on the table. And so this is a huge, exciting victory. It really goes to show that there is a significant price to pay for a district to discriminate against, a teacher who is holding true to her Christian beliefs and really just standing firm in the truth.
Gosh, it's amazing to see how God, of course, he closes doors, but when he does that, he opens other doors. And I feel like that's exactly what he's done with you. And to hear, your students finding your social media. I mean, otherwise they would have had, there was nothing in your day-to-day interaction with these students that would have led them to believe that you were any sort of phobe or ism or I'm sure other things that they labeled you. It was merely finding your post on social media.
Yep. Yeah. I think the only other thing I could say that would have clued them in is being unique as a PE teacher. On Mondays, I called it run day. We would go down to the track and I would give them, a running activity, maybe bleachers, sprints, whatever it may be. But it was the one time that I would let them listen to music or a podcast of their choosing while they got their running in. And so I would walk around the track and have my phone in my pocket playing something of my choosing, just loud enough for me to hear. And I told my school district this because there was an allegation made against me that I broadcasted sermons to my class. And I just have to laugh at it because I've never done it and I never would do that. But I told them, I'm like, they might have walked by me and heard a worship song quietly coming from my phone, but that's it. And then you don't want to hear what they're playing over in the weight room. You know what I mean? So it's so interesting, right? How coaches can blast really vulgar, rap songs in the weight room, but this PE teacher cannot quietly play a worship song. Nope, she's reported and she's canceled.
Well, it's the double standard we see across every realm of society, unfortunately. Listening to you, basically where they interrogated you on your religion and your religious beliefs, asking you to essentially quote, show them where in the Bible it says that you have to adhere to biologically correct pronouns. I mean, I can't imagine they would pursue this type of action to any other religion.
Exactly.
Which shows you, I mean, whether it's this scenario or Harrison Butker recently. I mean, he's a devout Catholic giving a commencement speech at a Catholic university to a bunch of Catholic students. I was so shocked to see the outrage, the public attention that this story got for, weeks. It blew my mind, but I think that shows, even the mention of his name, heads will rear back and teeth will gnash, and listening to you, that is certainly what I feel like has happened. And so it's been, of course, known that the gender ideology movement as a whole, it has become an infringement on our First Amendment rights and the freedom of speech. But listening to you share this from your religious perspective and background, do you see this issue as a whole, whether it's the medicalization side of things, whether it's the sports side of things? I mean, do you see this as a spiritual battle?
Absolutely. At the second I walked into that first meeting with my school district and had these, crafted allegations made about me, which were all crafted based on the students' finding of my religious beliefs, I felt like the Holy Spirit immediately said, "You're entering spiritual warfare, stand firm." And, that is exactly what the word of God calls us to do is, armor up and stand firm so that we can stand against the schemes of the devil, of the evil one. And so this is absolutely spiritual. We can't exactly tell that to everyone because, there's people who are like, I'm not religious, I'm not spiritual, but, the fact of the matter, it is. And so because of that, we know that the only way we can really truly fight it is in the spiritual. And so, I was just reflecting the other day, truly the only way I made it through this whole trial, which it's been 2 years pretty much in total, a little over 1 year since being fired, but 2 years since they found my social media and it all went down. But truly the only way I've made it through, been able to take a stand, been able to withstand all the hate that's come at me is because I've battled in the spiritual through prayer and worship, and being in the Word. There's no way I would have made it through this without that.
Now, what about any support from colleagues, from people around you? I imagine your family was supportive, but what about others from the school? Did you have any sort of public support or even private support from people who I imagine were some of your friends?
Yeah, all of the above. The support way outnumbers the hate that I get. I've been blown away by the support. I mean, just one example, my friend made me a give, send, go after I lost my job because I was like, we're losing our house. We're for sure losing our house, but it's fine. God's will be done. But she made this give, send, go and throughout the time that it was up, while I was litigating and just seeing what God was going to do with my life next, over 270 people, most of which I don't know, donated to that, and donated $30,000, which paid for like all of our mortgages while I litigated this. And that's just one example of many, many, many ways that the Lord just showed up and provided and blessed. But I did definitely get messages from teachers at the district who showed their support and concern and said, we have the same values and morals as you. Really, really interesting what happened after I was fired. My school district actually pushed out an LGBTQ transgender inclusivity training on the teachers. And this was in like March that they did this, like 2 months before summer. So I get a handful of teachers texting me saying, Jess, this is because of you. Like they pushed this out right after they fire you for, refusing to comply with the transgender directives. So this is for sure because of you. But our issue is there's a quiz at the end. We have to pass with 100%, and we would have to lie to do that. And I was like, don't lie, speak up, let them know, like, I can't take this quiz because I'm not going to lie to pass this quiz you want me to pass. And so several teachers requested a religious accommodation for that training and were actually granted it. So that's something we included in our case where it was like, why I was not accommodated. I spoke out, I spoke for my beliefs, and I sat through an accommodation meeting, but I was offered no accommodations. It was, no, we cannot accommodate your religious beliefs.
Wow. So it's like they seemingly realized, but too little too late. Yep. I saw the district released a statement saying that the settlement, it doesn't prove any sort of illegal action or discrimination on their behalf. I wanted to get your thoughts on that because I would beg to argue that majority of people disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the settlement itself proves otherwise. I don't really see why a district would pay out $360,000 if they had done nothing wrong. And I'm sure Bethany will be able to add a lot more to this. But, the fact of the matter is, sadly, these school districts, they're all under, the state, the Department of Education. So, they're not going to admit to wrongdoing. They are just literally robots for the Department of Ed and for the government. So it's really interesting too, throughout my case, they kept saying they did to me what they did because if they would have kept me, I essentially would have been like a liability, and they would have received lawsuits from transgender students or families. And it's so funny, right? Because they still received a lawsuit. So it's like lawsuits are probably going to come either way. But the fact of the matter is we're seeing transgender special rights, and I call them special rights because they are being given special rights. They didn't, not have any regular rights, before. So these transgender special rights are coming head to head with our religious liberty and freedom of speech. And it's like, we have to take this stand to show that one of those things supersedes the other. And we all here know, which that is. But a lot of people seem to think otherwise. So.
Of course. Yeah, and it's the same thing someone like the NCAA has said is we don't want to get sued. But I think because of people like yourself really setting the precedent, myself and 15 other athletes now suing the NCAA, I think they can now expect to get countersued right the other way.
Right.
Because we're sick of being trampled on. And so Bethany, I'm so glad that you're on the call as well. I would love to direct a question at you. And so and further looking at the district's claim about the settlement and different things, they said that the settlement was in the best interest of the students. Would you very briefly elaborate on who you are and what your take is on that?
So my name is Bethany Onishenko. I am one of the attorneys at Advocates for Faith and Freedom who just had the absolute honor of representing Jessica. Obviously, the school district's position that this settlement was in the best interest of students. How can that be so? obviously, if the district believed they did nothing wrong, they wouldn't have settled this case to begin with. Jessica and her religious rights are not second class to these transgender rights that they're proposing. And so Jessica's settlement just sends a huge message to the students as well as to other teachers across the country, that teachers of faith cannot be discriminated against for standing up to the newest wave of cultural propaganda. And so these districts can push these transgender directives and agendas. But again, teachers like Jessica standing up and saying no more, it just sends the message again, that religious rights are going to be championed in the end.
Right. Amazing. Now, are you, Jessica, you're still living in California, correct?
Yes, until the Lord says otherwise.
It's a hot topic, right? I'm from Tennessee. I live in the Nashville area, and we have a ton of you guys, you Californians, moving. They literally call themselves political refugees, leaving these blue states, coming to states that are historically conservative, southern red states. How do you feel when people look at California? I've put myself in this boat many times. They look at California as this lost cause, right? It's something that's too far gone. We have to just abandon it, abort ship, uproot your lives and move somewhere else. What's your perspective on this idea that California is just, it's too lost?
I would say that's exactly how the devil wants us to look at California, because the fact of the matter is, as we know, where California goes, so goes the rest of the nation. And I guess I'll kind of dive into this. I've never really done this before on a podcast, but something super interesting happened prior to all of this going down in my life. We tried to flee. We tried to flee California, and God brought our butts back the same week. I got to northern Alabama where my brother lives. That's where we were going to, transplant ourselves because we had just gone through all the, COVID stuff, and got there. And the fact of the matter was, I did not take up that move with the Lord. We didn't really. We just put blinders on and we were like, we're getting out. And it was once we got there that he was like, okay, you listening now? And he was like, get back home. We did not know why. We were just like, it was a really honestly dark time in our life. We came back. We were so confused. We were living in his parents' house because we had just sold our first house here in California. And it was just like, Lord, what is going on? And it was really like humbling and kind of depressing to come back to the place we were wanting to flee. But then literally a few months later, my whole work ordeal goes down. And, not right away when it went down did we have this feeling, but it was like right after my firing story went viral in January of 2023. And I think like my first big interview, probably with Tucker, me and my husband just like looked at each other and we're like, okay, like God is doing something with this stand and with this story. And this is why he brought us back.
I know, that gives me chills. That's just, it's remarkable to hear. And the way that you embraced it, because what else are you to do?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Bethany, I want to ask you, long-term implications of Jessica and her case that you guys were so amazing on, really, the outcome of it. What do you think this looks like for other teachers facing similar situations?
Yeah, so actually out of Jessica's case, we have launched a new campaign. Inspired by Jessica's story and her bold stand, we've actually launched the Teachers Don't Lie campaign. This campaign is basically just all about sending the message that teachers will not lie to students, to parents, to themselves. And so as a part of this campaign, we're just hoping to equip teachers with their constitutional rights, teachers who are facing these same LGBTQ agendas across the country. So we're ready to equip teachers with their constitutional rights and with educational resources, and just ready to defend any other teachers who are facing similar directives like Jessica was, who want to take a stand and want to sue these districts over these crazy ideologies.
Well, the way that academia and school districts and school boards are going, I imagine you guys will be busy.
We have actually received, since Jessica's case, we've received hundreds and hundreds of legal inquiries of teachers and people in all sectors of society facing just similar agendas. So we're ready to fight these things and excited for the outcomes.
That's amazing. And I bet they're from all over. As we've said, I think people imagine this is only happening in New York and Michigan and California and these states that lean that way. But I would say you're probably even more susceptible to this happening in conservative states because people think that you're immune to it. It's not happening here. But as we know, that's how Satan works and through deception and in darkness. So I thank you guys for what you're doing. Jessica, what are your plans moving forward for the future?
Yeah, I really believe God has worked all of this together for my good, for my family's good, and I think even the good of so many others. But I am now homeschooling my 3 children, keeping them as far away from public education as possible. So just adjusting to stay-at-home mom life, homeschooling mom, which I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be able to do. Because again, I went to college for 7 years to become a teacher, and I never saw myself just walking away from that, even if I had wanted to homeschool my kids. But our God is good and knows the desires of our hearts. And he took me out and put me home, but not without this huge story to go along with it. So that is what I'm doing. And then, the campaign Teachers Don't Lie, I'm helping with that. And we are just so excited to help, the next, hopefully several teachers take a stand, because, change isn't going to come just from my story, but I definitely think it can maybe be the start of it. So we're excited for this campaign and really just trying to get it across to every teacher in the nation. Make sure they know about www.teachersdon'tlie.com, where they can go for resources and a legal inquiry and so forth.
Amazing. And I disagree. I think your lone story, which, as we know, it's really not a lone story, but it is making change. It is sparking change. You're inspiring others, and it's incredible. And so I'm grateful for you both. This makes me feel hopeful. I think it's easy to kind of get wrapped up in the negative stories and all the adverse things that are affecting our society, affecting parental rights, affecting the innocence and the safeguarding of children, really terrible things. But this story, it makes me feel revitalized. And that is something I think that we all need. So thank you, Jessica, Bethany, for your steadfast efforts to restore common sense and sanity, and more importantly, biblical truth and religious liberty. Very grateful for you guys.
Thank you, Riley. Keep doing what you do too. You're an inspiration.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Gains for Girls podcast. If you are a teacher or an educator or know anyone in any state that has dealt with these issues that are growing more and more common daily, make sure you check out the Teachers Don't Lie campaign. What they are doing is phenomenal. Jessica, she has set the precedent and has really, sent a message loud and clear to not just her school district in Southern California, but to school districts across the nation, that we won't allow ourselves and our rights and our liberties to be trampled on. I think we could all learn something from Jessica. But anyways, nonetheless, we are glad that you are here. Make sure you check us out again next week. But in the meantime, we will see you, and be safe. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.